Welcome in this little special on Texas football. We're going to call the Sark script from Rod Babers. I'm Gerry Hamilton, joined by Rod Babers. This show is sponsored by Tackle Addict. We'll tell you more about Tackle Addict a little bit later. But Rod, we wanted to get into your breakdown of Steve Sarkisian's script from both Bama games and the Michigan game. So the early season game where Sark had months to prepare for a big-time talent neutralized opponent. What were your key takeaways from those opening scripts?
Oh, man. It was so much. This is actually a really fun exercise. First of all, when he's deep in his bag like this, your early down pass rate is going to be high. That's first and second down pass rate, averaging around 56%. Early down pass rate. We're talking about just the script here. So first three drives of the game, I cut it off in the Bama 2022 game when Quinn got hurt. I figured that's when he went off script. We're trying to get to the first 20 to, and Sark even said sometimes 40 plays has been thrown out there for a script. So early down pass rate is going to be pretty high. Also something, the deep shots. I love this. The deep shots stand out when you're looking at the script. We're talking about 20 yards or more down the field throws like that, and we know Arch loves the deep ball. In 2022, you had three deep shots in your first three drives. And that's against Bama. In 2023 against Bama, the first play of the third drive, you took your deep shots. As a matter of fact, you took three deep shots on that drive, including a double pass. And in 2024 against Michigan, the third play of the game was a double move deep shot there to Isaiah Bond. So you're going to get the deep shot pretty early from Sark too. I think that's something that, he's been prepping and getting the guys ready for and repping over and over again. Something else you'll notice, he loves pre-snap motion shifts. That also increases and during the script in these big games. 67% pre-snap motion rate during the season. It's around 61% against Ohio State last year. It was 63%. So when he's deep in his bag, being really creative, the juices are flowing. The pre-snap motion rates are really, really high as well.
So I'm not going out on a limb here. We're going to see a DeAndre Moore double move early at Ohio State Saturday, because he is your double move guy. He runs a really good corner route. I think if you can scheme something up, Arch throws it to the boundary versus deep middle, that's probably more what you're going to be looking at against Ohio State.
Oh, and to that point, man, you're a genius, Gerry, actually, because DeAndre Moore is usually a motion guy. I call him Motion Moore in the notes here, because he's usually your guy going in motion. Targets to motion, to your point about throwing deep. Targets to motion. That's targets to a player in motion prior to the snap, at the time of the snap. If you look at the targets to motion just in the script of those three big games, it ended up being 11.6 yards per attempt when you're targeting motion, and 20% of your pass plays targets to motion in that script. Guys, during the season, it's usually around, for Sark, it's around 9% of your pass plays. But that number more than doubles when you're talking about just a script for those three big games. So to your point, I agree with you. Targets to motion to DeAndre Moore could be big in this game. And that's when he likes to take his deep shots. Remember Xavier Worthy's 44-yard reception against Bama in 2022? Target to motion, easy way to isolate a matchup.
And Rod, going to the screen part of this, yes, there's play sequence, but there's more than that. He wants to see how the defense is rotating and reacting, right? I mean, get into the value of the screen early in the game, other than an easy completion and extension of run game.
Oh, yeah, and it's crazy how early it comes, Gerry. I mean, in 2022 against Bama, your first play was a screen, tight end screen. 2023 at Bama, first two plays, a quick screen to Cedric Baxter, and then Xavier Worthy with a tunnel screen, back-to-back plays. 2024 against Michigan, you had your third play overall was a screen. Was an incomplete screen, I believe, to a running back. So Sark loves the screen game, and I think ultimately for him, it'll be early on that he'll throw out the screen. And it could be, like I said, to the running backs, could be the tight ends, could be the wide receivers. To me, that's probably one of the more quintessential Sark plays. So if you had me to put money on what are the chances of you seeing a Sark screen in the opening script, I would say it's probably a 60 to 70% chance you're going to see it in the first 5 plays.
And what's interesting about that, Rod, is I think a lot of people would assume, it's just that was Quinn's strength because he didn't throw the ball that well down the field, especially outside the numbers. But I think this is also getting a quarterback comfortable, right? Having an easy completion in there to kind of help get the quarterback in a rhythm. And we're about to talk about what you kind of expect maybe or could work against Ohio State in the script. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think if you're trying to, because I think ultimately for Quinn, getting him into a rhythm was easier for Sark because he understood, hey, this guy is great in the RPO game. He's really good at off-platform throws, and he had a Jaden Blue and Trey Wisner running backs, easy completions. He calls them opportunity throws, opportunities for an easy completion for your quarterback that'll get them in the groove, get them in a rhythm. Naturally, when you watch Arch is, I don't think, a natural at some of those easy, quick throws. I think his ball placement is a little shaky sometimes. I think his footwork's a little off sometimes, but that'll all improve with reps. He's just better at getting deeper into progressions and some of those vertical shots. So it's going to be interesting to see without a Jaden Blue really to kind of help you on some of those swing screens and swing routes and how you get your quarterback now in a rhythm. I think Jack injuries, and shout out to my man Jeff Howe, we were talking about this. I think he may have a lot to do with that. Go look at Jack injuries and where a lot of his targets came from. A lot of work in the quick game and the short game. And he may be one of those guys that's a safety blanket for a young Arch Manning and help them work the quick game. And I wouldn't doubt if Sark kind of goes back to more traditional drop back quick game with Arch.
I was going to ask.
Slang it. Right?
Are we going to see part of the script under center for the first time?
Ooh, that's a great question. In the script, and you know what I think Sark would try to do with it, though? I think he'll try to go play action downtown with
it.
Yeah. Because I went and looked at the play action rate, and it's probably about play action RPO rate in the script for those three big games. It's probably around 40, a little over 45%. But from what I can gather, just looking at it, my notes, the RPO game seems to come into play more in the second drive of the game. Early in the game, he seems to rely on more old school traditional play action drops. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to get shots downfield that have been almost kind of I always say that there are times where Sark, I think, has a predetermined read for a guy.
Yes.
That, hey, this guy's going to be open. We've been working it, repping it. You see this, boom, you already know this guy's going to be open. And I think you'll get a couple of those potentially in play action shots. And if he can go under center, turn back to the defense, and then get those shots over the top, it's potentially you could really get those safeties to bite at that point. Because in college, you just don't see a lot of that at all. So I agree with you for the most part. And it expected early, like I said, the RPO game usually comes a little bit later. Maybe that's a Quinn thing. But with Arch, I would expect the play action pass, traditional play action pass, to kind of lead the way.
Yeah, so that leads us into, Rod, the second question of this show today is what pass plays concepts can we expect to see versus Ohio State? What run plays concepts can we expect to see versus Ohio State, in your opinion?
You're definitely going to see empty formation and empty reloads. I was shocked, actually, when I started looking at the script for those three big games. If you go look at the empty rate, empty reloads, usually Texas is around your empty rate. You're around 8%, between 8 to 11%. If you're looking at the year over year of your pass plays overall. In the script of those three big games, Gerry, you were at 29% of your pass plays came out of empty formation or empty reloads. A reload is when you start out empty and then you put the back into the backfield. So there is basically, you're talking about close to a 30% chance you're going to see empty. And I think Arch is really good at empty. I went and looked at Arch's empty snaps last season, 75% completion rate, 10.2 yards per attempt out of empty. He had a 12-yard run as well out of empty formation. I think actually some of his best work came out of empty in his two starts where he had a chance to practice the concepts and get used to them. A dual threat quarterback out of empty formation might be the my most difficult thing to defend in football today. And I think you'll see it early and often versus Ohio State with Arch Manning.
And Arch has a lot of things going for him in empty. Lightning quick release, quick decision maker, and dual threat ability.
Mhm.
That puts a lot of pressure on a defense out of empty for me,
It
Rod.
does. Yep.
So we've heard a lot of talk behind the scenes. I have that we expect Texas maybe to have more variation in their run game this year, more gap and more power schemes. How could you see that versus Ohio State in factoring into maybe Sark's script if what we're hearing behind the scenes actually comes to fruition?
That's a great point because I know you're going to see outside zone, right? I mean,
Yes.
within the first 3 plays against Bama in 2022, first 8 plays against Bama in 2023, you saw outside zone or sometimes a variation of the inside zone, like the split flow zone at times. But I'm with you. I think depending on the health of the running back room, especially since Cedric Baxter now is
We're
a
not
heavy.
running outside zone with Cedric Baxter in this game.
No, you're
No.
right. You want to run power with Cedric Baxter. Matter of fact, Cedric Baxter and Gerry Gibson are the only 2 running backs since Sark has been here at Texas to actually have more power gap runs at the end of the season than zone runs. So they've been predominantly a zone running team. So I think it's interesting that if Cedric Baxter's healthy, I don't know where they stand with Gerry Gibson in terms of his trust, but they do have 2 guys they like now to run downhill power concepts. That's important because Trey Weisner, he's great. His vision, his patience, his burst all lends itself to be more compatible with the outside zone. When you start now mixing power run concepts with the outside zone, then you throw in your counter, which is the counter is probably the second most, if you're talking about second most likely run play you'll see in that script. Behind the outside inside zone, you'll see that counter. They love that counter early on, and they're going to start running more of those counter power concepts, running power actually, pin and pull. I think you'll see more of that when Cedric Baxter is healthy, but now that he's ahead of schedule, you could see it even in as early as the Ohio State game.
And before we get to Rod's final thoughts on this, which will be what concepts will translate best versus Ohio State early, Rod's going to tell you about Tackle Addict, Brian Robeson, Brandon Belt, their company, Tackle Addict. And again, Brian Robeson will be on the post-game show with Rod Babers and Bobby Burton this season.
That's right. And if you're an avid fisherman who's always searching for the right supplies, well, you're done searching. You don't have to look any further than Tackle Addict. Do yourself a favor and check out tackleaddict.com. Owned and operated, as Gerry said, by legendary lifetime Longhorns, Brian Robeson, and also Brandon Belt, former Longhorn baseball great. They have everything you need at Tackle Addict for the best in today's fishing equipment. Tackle Addict is for the everyday fisherman and serious pros alike. Get their products shipped to you directly from the shores of Lake Sam Rayburn. That's tackleaddict.com. And Brandon and Brian also tell you, hook 'em horns. Thank you, guys. Tackleaddict.com, 409-698-9370.
Somewhere right now, Brian Robeson's coaching youth football. His team's probably preparing to shut somebody out this weekend. All right, so Rod, we're going to end with this. What concepts will translate best versus Ohio State early in this game, in your opinion? That's the big question, right? Where is Sark headed?
Yep, I think there are a few things that will translate really well. Multi-motion plays, that's when he has more than one guy in motion prior to the snap or a guy moving multiple times prior to the snap. Against Ohio State, those plays, you averaged over 8 yards per play. And multi-motion plays, and you'll see a lot of multi-motion early on in that script when Sark's deep in his bag. I brought up targets to motion, big fan of targets to motion early on against Ohio State. You had really good success in targets to motion. You were 7 of 9, 92 yards, 10 yards per attempt, 3 explosive plays when targeting motion versus Ohio State. I think that'll work really well. I like the empty. If you look at empty reloads, empty and quasi-empty, think about Jaden Blue's 2 touchdowns versus Ohio State. Go look at one was an empty reload, and the other one, he is essentially half of his body is outside the tackle box. It is Sark essentially trying to go empty without, giving off any signals or clues. I call that quasi-empty. You include that. Texas was 6 of 10, 74 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 first downs, and explosive play out of quasi-empty. I think those are a couple of the concepts that could work well again versus Ohio State that you had a lot of success with, obviously last postseason.
I guess the last thing I have for you, and this may be somewhat of a tough question to answer, but it's been a topic and asked a lot. So there's the element of unknown with Matt Patricia.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, has he really ever run the 3 high defense, right? and he didn't bring in any of his own assistants. He was hired to be the DC, and everybody stayed. What's the element of unknown for Sark with Matt Patricia headed in this, and how can that affect a script and when you go off script?
I agree. And that's why I can't wait to see how Sark handles it. He's been much better in the battle of adjustments, guys. I mean, he's a master in terms of game planning preparation. That's why Sark's first half, his scripts are some of the best in the country, if not the best. But he has struggled in the battle of adjustments, third quarter last year. Think about, the second half when he first got to Texas. So this game is basically mostly adjustments. It's going to be less about the preparation game plan, and he'll go into the game and probably admittedly have to throw out his game plan in the first quarter and have to go on the fly and improvise. I think this is where Sark's going to evolve as a true chess master, because when you go up against elite coaches, elite play callers, Kirby Smart being one of those guys, and we've talked about Kalen DeBoer's record versus those types of coaches. You're going to have to, at one point, outwit them and win the chess match within the game. And oftentimes Sark, I think, settles and really, I think it just tries his best not to lose the game in the second half. I think now you're going to get a more aggressive Sark who's going to go out there and take the crown in the second half from these big time coaches. So him winning the battle of adjustments, I think, is the next evolutionary step for him to become an elite coach.
That is everything you need for Sark's script. Our thoughts from Rod Babers. For Rod, I'm Gerry Hamilton. Thanks for joining in on this special On Texas Football edition of Sark's script. Rod Babers' thoughts on that. Rod, thanks very much, and we'll talk to you Friday.
Yes, sir. Hook 'em.